Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Ovik from Your Literary World, and from today we are starting the Anglo-Norman literature and the Middle English. As you already know, in the net examination point of view, that they asked two questions from this period, and it is becoming a very important topic for our discussion. We cannot leave these topics behind just because they are old. So, without any further delay, let's start our session. As you already see in your screen, the slides, and in my mobile, I can see them. I'm going to go for all the pointers and I'm going to explain them. So be careful what you are listening and write down the things that I am telling you. They are needed for your net examination because you need not to lose the 4 marks all of a sudden, or at least 2 marks in the net examination or CUET PG. So first, in origins of Normans. So who were Normans in the first place? Normans were the Vikings who came in France and adapted the culture of France, and they became the Normans. And these Norman people, these French Vikings, they came in England and they became the Anglo-Norman. काइंड ऑफ यू कैन से एंगल सेक्शंस एंड जूट्स वाला स्टोरी, बट थोड़ा यहाँ पे डिफरेंट है, ठीक है, कि वहाँ पे वाइकिंग्स आए यहाँ पे फ्रांस में, थोड़ा पोर्शन उन्होंने कॉन्कर कर लिया, एंड आफ्टर दैट दे केम इन इंग्लैंड एंड दे अडॉप्टेड द कल्चर ऑफ इंग्लिश एंड दे हैड ऑलरेडी द फ्रेंच कल्चर विद देम. So this is the story of Anglo-Normans. The second point is the promise never kept. It is the story of William the Conqueror, and according to him, so we are not adding anything. So William the Conqueror says that we have a promise with Edward. Edward was the king of England on that time, and Edward was a distant cousin of William the Conqueror. So they are related in terms of cousins. Okay. So Edward says to William that after my death, since I do not have any kind of child or children or any kind of heir to the throne, you can come in England and you can just have the throne in your hand. And as a consequence, obviously, if I am from India, I am not going to accept the English prime minister or French prime minister to came in India and became the prime minister of India. Obviously, it's not going to be accepted. The councils of English people, they did the same thing. They went for the English people and they asked a person known as Harold Godwinson to be the king of England. Harold Godwinson, King Harold, became the king of England, and that infuriated William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror came in England and conquered England after killing Harold Godwinson. In 1066 AD, this is very important and crucial point that you must note down. In 1066 AD, we have the Battle of Hastings, where William the Conqueror, also known as William the Bastard, killed Harold and became the king of England, at the same time the Duke of Normandy. Obviously, the French connection we must entertain, right? So Duke of Normandy, at the same time the King of England. This is the connection with the French throne, at the same time the English throne with William the Conqueror. 25th of December, he became the King of England. The date is not needed, 25th of December. Just remember 1066 AD, also known as Norman Conquest, also known as the Battle of Hastings. Norman means William the Conqueror. He was a Norman, French plus Viking culture. He came in England, and with him he brought the idea of the castle. So the castle culture, the huge towers that you can see, the castles in England, these are coming with William the Conqueror. And in that time, English throne became the trilingual. So there are total 3 languages. One was French, second was Latin, third was the common English. So French for loyalty and royalty. So if you were loyal to the throne, you were obviously royal. The warriors, they were having all kinds of knowledge regarding the French. So French was the first preferred language in the court also, court in the sense ki where we have the king, all right, and all the loyalties and the royalties. So that is the first language, it is the French. And after that, the Latin. Those who are in the church, those who were, you can say, academician, they were dealing with books, they were dealing with Latin. So for the royalty, we have the French. For the academics and the church, we have the Latin. And for common people, we have the English. So these are the 3 pointers that we are done. That is the language game, castle culture, we are done. Now, alliterative revival. If you just visit to the previous section of the old English literature video, you're going to find out the concept of alliteration. The initial consonant sound repetition, this is known as alliteration, that can be seen in the stories of the Beowulf, all right, and the other old English literature stories also. And this term alliterative revival, what does it mean? Alliterative means alliteration, revival means rejuvenation, मतलब पहले कोई मर गया उसको फिर से अभी जिंदा करा जा रहा है. So this is known as alliterative revival. And what is it's happening? The sounds, the initial consonant sound, the repetition of the initial consonant sound are rejuvenated again. And there are total 5 works which are dealing with the alliterative revival. In the net examination, you are going to confront this question. First of all, alliterative revival concept, as you already know, the initial consonant sound repetition revived in the Anglo-Norman and Middle English literature, because we do not dissect the differentiation between Anglo-Norman literature at the same time the Middle English literature. So you can say they're clubbed, they are fused. As a consequence, we can interchangeably use Anglo-Norman at the same time the Middle English literature. So in the Middle English literature, the alliterative revival happened, and there are total 5 works who used this alliterative revival. First, the Pearl poets. There are total 4 works that you need to remember no matter what. In the examination, they're going to ask you that the Pearl poets wrote 4 works. Identify the odd one. So the 4 works are Pearl, Patience, Purity, and purity also known as cleanliness. So if you are going to find out no purity but cleanliness, it is the alternative title of purity. So Pearl, Patience, Purity, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and another work of William Langland, The Vision of William Concerning Piers Plowman, the entire title, but in short, Piers Plowman. These 5 works, we have the alliterative revival. So first was Pearl, second was Purity or cleanliness, third was Patience, fourth was Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and fifth was the William Concerning Piers Plowman of William Langland. These 5 works confronted and used the alliterative revival. So except the work of William Langland, these 4 works written by the Pearl poets: Pearl, Patience, Purity or Cleanliness, and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. These 4 works are delivered by the Pearl poets. Remember that. Now, when it comes to the examination, if you just visit the PYQs, the previous year questions, you are going to find out they asked the beginning of a work, and that work was Morted Arthur, The Death of Arthur by Thomas Mallory. And in that option, you're going to find out Book of the Duchess, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and other 2 books. All right. So it is kind of, you can say, providing us a hint that if you are reading Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the beginning line is going to be very crucial. When we are going to deal with Sir Gawain and the Green Knight in the next slide, second slide, you can say, or maybe the third slide, I don't know. We are going to see all these things. But when it comes to the summary, just read the summary of Pearl, just read the summary of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And when it comes to Pearl, it is not like you have to read every single thing. Whatever I am saying, you have to just remember that and note the things down. So there was a father whose daughter died, and it is a dream allegory. Pearl, it is a dream allegory, and in that allegory we can confront the father saw a dream, and in that dream the daughter appeared in the dream, and the daughter turned into a beautiful pearl. This is known as Pearl. This is the concept of Pearl. This is a dream allegory, part of alliterative revival written by Pearl poets. That is the end of the story of Pearl. Patience, Purity or Cleanliness, there is no need to read them. But when it comes to Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, we have to read it very, very carefully because it is important. Okay, so this is done. Pearl is done. Okay, so there are total 3 writers: Monmouth, West, and Lyamon. In the net examination, you're going to confront the chronology. So who was Geoffrey of Monmouth? Geoffrey of Monmouth is known as the father of legends. The legends of King Arthur. In terms of Shakespeare, the story of Cymbeline, the story of King Lear. These 3 stories are the sources of Geoffrey of Monmouth. All right, he wrote a work, Historia Regum Britanniae. In this story, we have the concept of King Arthur's story, at the same time the story of King Lear and Cymbeline. So if they're going to ask you in the net examination that what connection, like what stories, what plays that King Lear used that appeared in the story of Geoffrey Monmouth's Regium. So in that Regium, Historia Regum Britanniae, King Lear's, at the same time Cymbeline, these 2 stories already appeared. So the sources of these 2 stories, Historia Regum Britanniae of Geoffrey of Monmouth, and the Historia Regum Britanniae, it was translated in the French culture known as Brut, B-R-U-T, by Wace, W-A-C-E. All right, so Historia Regum Britanniae, it was translated in the French culture, written by Wace, known as Brut, B-R-U-T, and that Brut was also translated in the English version, written by Lyamon. So these are the things, these are the chronology that is needed in the examination. Already they have asked. So Monmouth, Wace, and Lyamon. If you can remember the translation, so these are all related to each other. So this is the thing. Now the owl and the nightingale. If you go for the beginning of the Middle English literature, you're going to find out these questions repeatedly in the net examination. They have asked the ending of the owl and the nightingale. So what is the story is all about? It is a debate poetry where the owl is a kind of representation of sorrowfulness, sulking moan, and the nightingale is a representation of beautiful song. Okay, so here the poetry begins that when the nightingale is singing, an owl was disturbed, and nightingale accused owl of having a sulking or mournful sound. And as a consequence, the debate began, and in the end, they went to a judge known as Nicholas Guilford. You have to remember the name. Nicholas Guilford was a judge. Both of them went to him, and the debate remained unresolved. This is the story of the owl and the nightingale. If you do not know, you are missing the PYQs. That's the reason PYQs are important, and every single time I talk these things quite carefully, that when you are reading the PYQs, it is not the PYQs. You have to be careful that when you are reading the PYQs, you have to expand the idea. So the representation of the owl, the representation of the nightingale, you have to remember. And Nicholas Guilford was the person. Okay, so they went to Nicholas Guilford. That is the end of the first slide. Now go for the second slide. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. What is the genre? Genre is obviously alliterative revival and poetry. Second was beginning. After the siege of the assault of Troy, Felix Brutus founded the kingdom of Britain. So Troy ended. Troy, the city of Troy, decimated completely. This is the beginning. At the same time, we are going to find out Brutus founded the kingdom of England, or Britain, you can say more precisely. So in the examination, if they're going to ask you that who founded the kingdom of Britain, the nation, then you have to be careful to write down that it was Brutus. Click specifically in a net examination, and this is the beginning of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So the destruction of Troy and the findings of Britain. Now let's go for that. Who was Gawain? Green Knight challenge. So Gawain was a knight. He was the cousin of King Arthur, and he was the part of the Arthur's round table. All right. So there was a round table. All the knights were there, and all of a sudden, a knight, kind of green, you can say, came there and challenged all the knights there. And green, you can say, if you just visit the Harry Potter, you're going to find out that green is a specific, very useful color for Slytherin. All right. So Salazar Slytherin is the founder. Never mind, we are not talking about Harry Potter in the first place, but Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So the Green Knight came. The Green Knight challenged all the knights that first you have to hit me, and after taking the hit, I'm going to hit you after 1 year. So the hit was like, you can just behead me, you can just decapitate me, and after 1 year I'm going to decapitate you. And everyone was like, if I'm going to kill that person is not going to be alive, no matter what. So what, like, there was a Gawain, the knight, the cousin of King Arthur. He came in and confronted Sir Green Knight, and Green Knight was beheaded. And as you can say, after 1 year, you have to come and confront me. So Green Knight was beheaded. All of a sudden, everyone was, oh, like Gwen did that thing. And Green Knight took the headless head and went there and said that after 1 year, you have to come and visit me. So that is very surprising thing, like immortality kind of concept. Those who went to Naruto, like Hidan, no matter how much pain that you can give, he is not going to die. So that happened when it comes to Green Knight. Now, after 1 year, Sir Gawain visited the castle, like he went to the journey. And when he was going through the journey, he met a person known as Bertilac. And Bertilac was a lord, and Bertilac says that I'm going to help you and you're going to help me. That thing happened, and he had a wife. And that wife, a kind of, you can say, he was trying to tempt the Gawain, the knight itself. And Gawain was not that much of tempted, although he was a fear for his own life. So Bertilac's wife gave him a slash. Slash, kind of, you can say, when someone wins a kind of concert or anything, the winner gets a kind of band. So it's like this. Okay, so this is the band kind of thing, and it's written winner. लंबा जो वहाँ पे कप वहाँ पे जो cloth होता है उसके ऊपर मैं बोल रहा हूँ. So that has happened. So Bertilac's wife gave him to the Gwen, and it is also assured that you are not going to get killed by anyone. Okay, so that was the power of that band. That was the power of the slash. All right, so he took that slash and he just confronted the Green Knight after 1 year, and in the end, the Green Knight revealed himself as the Lord Bertilac. So Bertilac and the Green Knight, both of them are same. This is the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The 3 blows that Gawain took, there was only a cut, but after, like, when he was not dead, he came in the court of Arthur, and everyone just owed a green slash. I'm going to insert the picture of green slash, how we might. Okay, so let's move on to the other chart. Okay, so we are going for Geoffrey Chaucer. He's the behemoth here. And in the net examination, you're going to confront at least one question from Geoffrey Chaucer, as you already confronted in the December examination of 2025. So, Chaucer, birth and general title. When it comes to birth year, we are not certain. Sometimes it is written 1332, sorry, 1338. Sometimes it is written 1340, sometimes 42, sometimes 43, sometimes 45. We do not know. But if you want to go for the birth year of Geoffrey Chaucer, ideally you can consider 1340 or 1342 as the birth year of Geoffrey Chaucer. Now, the general title that he was bestowed, he is known as the father of English poetry. He is known as the father of English literature sometimes, and he is known as, with him is born our real poetry, that is said by Matthew Arnold. All right, so Matthew Arnold says that with him is born our real poetry. It is to Geoffrey Chaucer. And when he was writing Canterbury Tales, John Dryden, in his preface to Fables, after going through the Canterbury Tales, he says, here is God's plenty. So every single thing that God created in Canterbury Tales, you can find out every single thing. This is said by John Dryden. Here is God's plenty. Regarding Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, preface to Fables, this is the name of the work, because most of the cases the students are reading that here is God's plenty delivered by, but you do not know the source. What you're going to do if their net examination, they're going to ask you the source. And Matthew Arnold, that with him is born our real poetry, because Geoffrey Chaucer refined every single thing. Geoffrey Chaucer created the Englishness, not the amalgamation or fusion every single thing. He, through Canterbury Tales specifically, he created the Englishness. And when it comes to Sir Philip Sidney says that it was Troilus and Cresseid of Geoffrey Chaucer, which was very, very important and very, very good, not Canterbury Tales. According to Sir Philip Sidney did not like the idea of Canterbury Tales and the Englishness. He was more inclined towards the classical literature. If you just go through the concept of Harold Bloom in the literary theory of psychoanalysis, this is known as the anxiety of influence, that you are so much of involved with the past that you are thinking that the past is the parameter through which you are going to judge the present. Okay, so you can say the past work is becoming a touchstone of the present work's consideration. So for Geoffrey Chaucer's work, if you go through it, according to Sir Philip Sidney, it was Troilus and Cresseid which works as a kind of touchstone. So these are the general concept that you have to remember. Geoffrey Chaucer was captured in the 100 Years of War. Obviously, he was not a warrior कि चलो अब तो मार ही देंगे सबको, ऐसा कुछ था नहीं वहाँ पे. He was a kind of diplomat in the reign of Edward I, and when he was captured by the French people, there are total two houses. One was the House of Plantagenet. House of Plantagenet was England, and House of Valois from the French. 100 Years of War that you have to remember. We are going to deal with later, not right now, because we are not talking about the history in the first place. So in the Middle English literature, you're going to find out the Black Death, also known as the Black Plague. It is the plague, bubonic plague, which killed huge amount of people. All right, possibly coming from China. So it was bubonic plague, Black Plague. In terms of history, you're going to find out the 100 Years of War, and after that you're going to confront the peasant revolt of 1381. These historical references, you can just simply go to Google and simply just go to ChatGPT and ask the historical references. These are very minimal. There is no need to read every single thing. All right, so where I was, so Chaucer's title are over, 100 Years of War over. So when it comes to Chaucer, he was also abducted, and Edward ransomed him by providing $16. $16 need not to remember. ठीक है, ये क्रॉम्पटन रिकेट के किताब में था $16 concept. Just remember that he was the poet who was abducted in the 100 Years of War by French people. All right, this is the thing that you have to just remember. All the titles that I said already, the quotations that I said already, just remember them. He was the first poet who was buried in Poets' Corner at Westminster Abbey. He was the first poet who was buried in Poets' Corner at Westminster Abbey. If you want to read his entire biography, like his father's name and mother's name, they are not important actually, but there are some incidents, like जब वो छोटा था, मतलब चौसस के पिताजी, तो उनके जो आंटी थे उनको चौसस को पिताजी को एबडक्ट कर लिया पूरी तरीके से. ठीक है, आफ्टर द एबडक्शन, क्यों, लाइक जेफरी चौसस फादर हैड ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी, एंड आफ्टर द एबडक्शन द चौसर्स father's auntie thought that I could capture all the property, although she was captured red-handedly by the royalty on that time and fined around $250 if I'm not wrong. तो अभी तो मतलब 10-12 लाख होंगे ही आज के वैल्यू में. So this is the basic information that you need. Now, his translation and three phases. So when it comes to translation, he translated two works. One was Boethius, the Consolation of Philosophy, and second was Gallum and Mune, the Romans of the Rose, also known as Roma de la Rose. In the NET examination, already they asked these questions: who were the original writers of Romans of the Rose or the Roma de la Rose? It was in French. Okay, so not everything he translated. The first part only Chaucer translated, and it was written by Gallum and Mune. So Gallum and Mune, these were the original writers of the Romans of the Rose that Chaucer translated the work, or you can say modified to an extent. Okay, this is the first. And second, Boethius is the Consolation of Philosophy, Geoffrey Chaucer translated. So in terms of the translation, we have only two works. Just remember these things. Now after that, three phases. In terms of Chaucer, if you just want to dissect his phases, like in the examination, you can confront the question that go for the chronology of the works of Geoffrey Chaucer. There is no need to go for the chronology in terms of the mind. Just simply do one thing. This is a trick. First phase is the French phase, second phrase is the Italian phrase, third phrase is the English phrase. So first is French, Italian, and English. If you know that these works are belonging to the French phrase, these works are belonging to the Italian phrase, and these works are belonging to the English phrase, then you need not to remember any single thing. This is the best thing that I can tell you. So when it comes to the French phase specifically, we have the Romans of the Rose, the Roma de la Rose. It was written in dream allegory, where Chaucer wakes up in a beautiful garden. This is known as the garden tradition. When the writer wakes up in a beautiful garden, there is birds which are chanting and a small river flowing softly. This is known as the garden tradition, which is very famous for the Middle English literature. At the same time, the dream allegory. All right. Can you tell me which work is considered as the first dream allegory work in the history of English literature? I already talked about this work in the previous video. If you do not know, just visit that. If you know the answer already, just go to the comment section and write down that what is the first work in dream allegory. So let's move towards that. We are done with the Roma de la Rose, and now let's go. Like, it is the translation. That's the reason I first finished it. Now go for the Book of the Duchess, also known as the Dream of Chaucer. If you just go for all the works of Chaucer, the Dream of Chaucer, also known as the Book of the Duchess, you see, it is considered as the earliest work. So in terms of chronology, Book of the Duchess or the Dream of Chaucer, both are the same. It is coming first. So it is the first work of Geoffrey Chaucer. You can see the original work. So Chaucer was having insomnia. Insomnia means sleeplessness. Neend nahi aa raha. So Chaucer was having the insomnia, and here was a person, his servant. He came and he gave him the Ovid's Metamorphosis, and in that specifically of Ovid's Metamorphosis, he was reading the story of Alcyone and Ceyx. And when he was reading, he slept, and he wakes up in the May morning. There was a rush, everyone was rushing on that time, so summary is also needed. All right, and he saw that the knight was missing, so he just followed a small dog, a small hound. The hounds were there. Like you can say, the lord is missing, so that by following that hound lead him to a forest where the knight was playing a game of chess with the divine goddess Fortuna. Fortuna matlab bhag, ठीक है, fortunate. So all the things which are controlled was Fortuna, and in that game of chess, Fortuna won and knight lost the game, and as a consequence he had to pay something, and the bet was his queen. So you can say the Blanche of Lancaster in the story, in the reality also. So this is the story where the knight loses his queen, you can say. And every single time, if you go to Mahabharata or any kind of story, women were always the bet. If you just go to Troilus and Chryseid, there is a line said by Hector: we used here no women for to sell. हम यहाँ पे कोई भी female का कारोबार करते नहीं है exchange के लिए. So they are not a sense of object. But in terms of Middle English literature or any kind of literature that you can say, women were considered as objects. And you can see it is in the story also of the Book of the Duchess. All right. So this is the story of Book of the Duchess, written in octosyllabic couplets. Remember the form; it is needed. Written in octosyllabic couplets. These are all poetry. All right. So this is the end of Geoffrey Chaucer's the Book of the Duchess. And after that, we are jumping to the Italian phase. And in the Italian phase, we have a work known as Annalid and Arcite. Although I am not sure, because when I studied Cambridge Book of Middle English Literature, it is clearly said that the the Annalid and Arcite, this work was not particularly by Geoffrey Chaucer. It could be by William Langland. So we do not know. But in the examination, possibly if I'm not wrong, they said that Annalid and Arcite by Geoffrey Chaucer. Never mind, Geoffrey Chaucer, just remember. Okay. There is a line: The Book of the Duchess. I cannot understand every day how I survive, because neither day or night can I sleep, not even a little. This is the beginning of the Book of the Duchess. As I was saying, that Chaucer was suffering for insomnia, the sleeplessness, and it was dedicated to, like, it was written for Blanche of Lancaster, written for the John of Gaunt. All right, Chaucer's patron. John of Gaunt was the king on the, not king, but he was the lord of that time. He was the duke of that time, and he lost his wife Blanche of Lancaster, and for them it was written, and it was written in octosyllabic couplets. So that is the end of the first slide. Now go for the second slide. The Parliament of Fowls. So after Annelida and Arcite, it was the Parliament of Fowls. So we are entering into the Italian phase. What is it? First use of the rhyme royal. So it was Parliament of Fowls that Chaucer first used the concept of rhyme royal. What was the form? A B A B B C C. A B A B B C C, written known as rhyme royal. Why it is known as rhyme royal? James the First, also known as Scottish Chaucerian, first Scottish Chaucerian, used that Chaucerian form of the rhyme royal, or you can say Chaucerian form, A B B A B B C C. And according to, because of his name, because he was a royal family, because of his name, it is becoming the rhyme royal. So royalty related not to Chaucer but to James the First, royalty. But the form, it is created by Geoffrey Chaucer, A B A B B C C. Okay. Anthropomorphism, like the summary as well as the ending. So if you just go for the story of the Parliament of Fowls, all, like, there was a goddess known as nature, and in that nature's garden all kinds of fowls, or you can say all kinds of birds, because on that time fowls means bird. But if you just go through our modern language, fowls means a birds which can be hunted. So all the birds are not hunted, no, you cannot, even are going to hunt a crow. So birds which can be considered as hunted, known as fowls, and all the other birds are known as not fowls, but they are known as birds. But in the Middle English literature, all the birds, they're all considered as fowls. So generalization to specificization. All right. So in the goddess nature's garden, all kinds of birds came in order to find mate, sati dhundna. And Chaucer's The Parliament for Fowls, it is considered as the first recorded association of Valentine's Day. Net examination, I believe they did not ask, but still, like, this concept is very important, that if they're going to ask you that what is the first recorded association of Valentine's Day, through which works that we can see, it was the Parliament of Fowls, through which we can see the first recorded association of Valentine's Day, because every words came in the garden of the nature, the goddess nature, in order to find out their love, their mate. And there was an eagle known as Formel, the girl eagle. She was white, and for the love there was three eagles, three males, one female. They were competing, and at the end all the things were unresolved. And it is said that Chaucer, The Parliament of Fowls, it was written because of the marriage of Richard with Anne of Bohemia. All right, so it's kind of a dedication, you can. So these things that you have to remember. And it is known as anthropomorphism, like all the characteristics of humans can be seen in the characteristics of birds. So bird characteristics, all are, or animalistic characteristics, are replaced by humans characteristics. जब इंसानों का क्वालिटी कोई भी जानवर में दिखेगा, कोई भी बर्ड्स में दिखेगा, दिस इज नोन एज एंथ्रोपोमॉर्फिज्म. All right, so you already know the concept. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening, best example of it, I believe. And ending, so in that end there is a repetition of some word. Now welcome summer with thy sonnet soft. Now welcome summer with thy sonnet soft, known as rundle. Rundle means repetition of one line again and again, repetition of lines again and again. Okay, known as rundle. Now welcome summer with thy sonnet soft. Soft sun. अब यहाँ पे अगर तुम सॉफ्ट सन देखने के लिए जाओगे, झुलस जाओगे पूरी तरीके से. 48 47 टेम्परेचर. Now let's move on to Troilus and Chrysid. If you think that Chaucer did not write Canterbury Tales, it was Troilus and Chrysid which is going to be the most important then, if we do not have Canterbury Tales. But if you just go to the ranking, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, and after that Troilus and Chrysid. And in the net examination, they have asked questions related to the summary. So when it comes to Chaucer's Troilus and Chrysid, you have to be careful. It is written in the form of rhyme royal, and the source of the story is El Philostrato. All right. Love stricken. In terms of the story, there was two persons known as Troilus and Chrysid. Troilus was, from the very beginning, he was not very careful in terms of love. In another word, he hated loves. But all of a sudden, he confronted Chrysid in front of a church. So she was praying or something in terms of a temple, or in front of a temple, or in front of a church. He confronted Chrysid, and all of a sudden he fell in love. All right, so this is the beginning of the story. In that story, we have a character known as Pandarus. And in the story, since Troilus, Hector, Priam, all the people they are related, son, brother, these are things, all right. So when it comes to Priam, he was the father, Hector was the son, and Troilus also was the son. So it is related to the Troy. As you can see, the background is Troy. So there was a battle. Agamemnon was there at the same time Achilles. So Achilles versus Troilus happened in the end, and finally Achilles killed Troilus. But before that, we have a story. So his father, sorry, her father, like Chryseid's father, he was a cheater, or you can say he just converted to the Greek camp. So Chryseid's father went to the Greek camp. As a consequence, as a daughter, she had to go to the camp. Isn't it true? But on the same time, she was having the relation with Troilus. So Troilus is having a relation with the Chryseid. Chryseid father, he became a kind of cheater, abandoned by his own people, and he went to the Greek camp. And as a consequence, Chryseid father was also asking his daughter to come with him. So Chryseid went to the Greek camp by saying to Troilus that I am going to return within 10 days. So 10, it is important for the factual information. But she did not return, and in the Greek camp, there was a person known as Diomed. Diomed wooed, or Diomed proposed Chryseid, and they lived kind of happily. And after many, or maybe you can say after some times, that Troilus got to know that he had been cheated by Chryseid, and he became furious. He went to the war by killing everyone, and finally slain by Achilles. So this is the story of Troilus and Chryseid, specifically dedicated to Gower, known as moral Gower. So Troilus and Chryseid ended. Did I mention the House of Fame? Yes, House of Fame. I forgot the House of Fame. So parody and echo, that's the first point. So it is a parody, the House of Fame. It is known as the parody to Dante's Divine Comedy, where purgatory, hell, and paradise. Purgatory, hell, and paradise. These three forms were echoed. So House of Fame, it is a parody to Dante's Divine Comedy. Just remember that there was a goddess known as House, and that is the end of the story. You need to read nothing else. Although there is an incident, there was a huge golden eagle who carried the writer in his arms. The eagle carried the writer in his arms, and that eagle was Job, J-O-V, God Job. So this is the end of the House of Fame. There is also another influential point. It is considered as the first reference through which the concept of sound created, according to the Penguin Book of Canterbury Tales. All right. So this is the end. Now, the legend of good women that we have to study in the NET examination, you also confronted this question. So first of all, how many legends? There are total 9 completed legends, although some other books you are going to find out 10. But according to the NET examination, there are total 9 legends. Form, it was written in decasyllabic couplets, all right, and it is known as the last work of dream allegory. So this is the question: what is the first work of dream allegory? Tell me. And then the last work of dream allegory, which is known as the Legend of Good Women. Chaucer's regrets and change of phase. Okay, so if you just go through the summary at the NET examination, they asked this question. So first, Chaucer was presenting women as unfaithful. Just like Troilus and Chryseid, you can see that Chryseid did not come. She cheated on Troilus. And he was presenting the women in the way that unfaithful. And there was a god known as Cupid in dream allegory version of the Legend of Good Women, confronted Chaucer and asked Chaucer, why did you present women in very unfaithful manner? Chaucer had no answer, and as a consequence, the god Cupid punished Chaucer by saying you had to write a work where you are going to present women as faithful and men as unfaithful. So Chrysemandra, Dido, Cleopatra, all the names of the legends appear in that work where they were abandoned by their lovers or cheated. All right. So this is the Legend of Good Women that influenced Tennyson. So remember that work. And then the phase changes, the Canterbury Tales that we have to now read. Okay, so when it comes to the Canterbury Tales, before going through Canterbury Tales, there are some words that you have to remember. First, complaint of Chaucer to his empty purse. This is considered as Chaucer's last work. The first work was the Book of the Duchess, also known as the Dream of Chaucer. And when it comes to the last work, it is known as the Complaint of Chaucer to his empty purse, dedicated or referred to Henry IV, Henry IV. Okay, this is the thing. There was a book known as Treatise on Astrolabe, and it was dedicated, or it was written for his son who was reading astronomy on that time. So these two works that you have to remember. Although there are other works like an ABC, The Complaint of Venus, The Complaint of Mars. These works also written by Geoffrey Chaucer. At the same time, Annelida and Arcite, although I talked about Annelida and Arcite in previously, so I'm not going to go for the deep down there. And when it comes to Canterbury Tales, obviously we are not going to go for the entire Canterbury session right now, but we are going to go for a dedicated video which are going to deal with Canterbury Tales in the first place. So when it comes to Canterbury Tales, how many pilgrims were there? There are total 31 pilgrims, and out of that 31 pilgrims, 30 intended to tell the story, 2 from going, 2 from coming back. So there are total 30 pilgrims who were about to tell stories, 2 going, 2 coming. So how many stories are going to be delivered? 120. 30 going and coming. And in that story we have Chaucer, not as a writer but as a character. Like there's a kind of particular and peculiar fashion in the Middle English literature that you're going to confront, that all the writers, they were trying to insert themselves in the story. Whether you go for the Langland's The Vision of William concerning Piers Plowman, whether if you go for Confessio Amantis of Gower, whether you go for Geoffrey Chaucer, all works, he was there. So the presenting himself as a character was a feature of the Middle English period that can be seen in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, where the character was Chaucer, not the writer. In terms of writer, obviously Canterbury Tales was written by Geoffrey Chaucer, but it was the character Chaucer appeared as a pilgrim. Just remember that. All right, and like there are 120 stories are going to be delivered, and delivered by 30 pilgrims. It was intended, but only 23 pilgrims appeared and 24 stories delivered. And out of these 2 stories, like 2 extra now, so 1 plus 1 2, so 2 stories were delivered by Geoffrey Chaucer the character, or Chaucer the character, not Geoffrey but Chaucer as a character delivered 2 tales, and that was the highest tales. No one of the pilgrims told 2 tales, but only Chaucer told 2 tales. So remember these things. So देयर टोटल 120 टेल्स इंटेंटेड, एपियर हुआ नहीं क्योंकि उससे पहले ही चौसर वहाँ पे मारा गया, ठीक है. सो मारा गया इन द सेंस कि ही डाइड. सो 120 टेल्स appeared, about to appear, and 30 pilgrims about to appear. All right, so 30 pilgrims, 4 stories each. Just remember that 23 pilgrims actually appeared actually, intended to appear or about appeared, there is a difference. About to appear मतलब वो appeared हुए नहीं, सोच वही था कि 30 pilgrims appear हम करवाएंगे, but वो हुआ नहीं. Only 23 pilgrims appeared and 24 tales appeared, and out of that 24 tales, 2 tales delivered by Geoffrey Chaucer. This is the beginning, and this is the beginning of the English phase. So French phase done, of the Italian phase, and we are now beginning with the English phase. What was the beginning? It was known as the Tabard-Inn of Southwark. Tabard-Inn was real, Southwark was real. So in the examination, if they're going to ask you that Tabard-Inn and Southwark, these are the parts of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, the beginning line of Chaucer Canterbury Tales was an imaginary place, it was a wrong statement. They were real, Tabard-Inn and Southwark. All right, and they are visiting to the shrine of St. Thomas a Becket. Religious people was very much of there, and Chaucer introduced a form known as 3 estates. 3 estate means all the people are going to be divided in 3 categories. The first category, the first estate, was the royalty, the knights, the warriors. They were the first estate. The second estate was the clergy people, the people of the church. All right, the religious people, they were the second estate. The third estate were the commoners. So these are the 3 concepts of the estates that can be seen in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, possibly influenced by the hierarchy of Aristotle. So that is the end of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Just we are going for the briefing. Okay. Okay, so work of his son, already talked about it, the Treatise on Astrolabe, work for Charles IV, the Complaint of Chaucer to his empty purse, and other works already talked about that, Annelida and Arcite, and ABC, the Complaint of Venus, the Complaint of Mars. There is also another work known as Proverb. All right, so let's move on to the last side, which is known as John Gower. John Gower is very important, very crucial, because in the NET examination already they asked questions. He wrote specifically and predominantly 3 works. Speculum Meditentis, the mirror of the world, the mirror of the mankind sometimes. Latin word equals to English translation, very important. No matter what, do not forget. Speculum Meditentis, the mirror of the world, the mirror of the mankind. Vox Clamantis, the voice of the God. And in that story, Vox Clamantis, the voice of the god, is the translation. We have the story of the peasant revolt, the reference of the peasant revolt of 1381. If you go for the Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, the peasant revolt can be seen. So 1381 was the peasant revolt, and it was like part of Vox Clamantis, and it is said the voice of the god is the voice of the commoners. All right. So Vox Clamantis, the voice of the god, and in that, if you go for the connotation, the voice of the god equals to the voice of the mankind, specifically the commoners. So we are done with Vox Clamantis, the Speculum Meritentes, and now the final work. It is important. It is crucial. If you are not going to read this work, maybe in the examination you're going to lose 2 points, known as Confessio Amantis, the lover's confession. It is the title, or you can say the confession of Amans, Amans, also known as lover. So need not to read the entire story. There are some critical points which are needed. For example, Aman equals to the writer himself, John Gower. So John Gower equals to Amans, and Amans appeared in the dream. It is also written in the dream allegory. So Aman appears in the story. He was having a kind of seductive thoughts, the sexual thoughts, you can say. And for that, he went to the goddess known as Venus. That what is the cure of these kind of thoughts? And Venus says that go to my person and just confess there. So Venus also had another person known as Genius, all right, Genius. So he went to Genius, he confessed every single thing, and Genius told him that you are now old, it's better to go for the religious devotion rather than any contemplation over sexual pleasure or sensual thoughts. All right, so at the end, Aman became Gower. So Gower already having a thoughts of sexuality and sensuality within him. Possibly he was married when he was 62, if I'm not wrong. So sensuality and the repression of sensuality can be seen in terms of the stories of the Middle English period. All right, so this is the basic story, and we have another person known as Chaucer in that story, and he is known as the poet of Venus. All right, so Venus poet in that story was Chaucer, and in the ending we have a line delivered by Venus: and great well Chaucer when you met, and me disciple and me poet. So this is the ending of Gower's Confessio Amantis. So that is that, and after this video I'm going to go for another video where I'm going to deal with the mystery plays, morality plays, and the cycles of plays, and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales specifically. At the same time, William Langland. All right, so this is the end of our first session related to the Middle English, and at the same time the weekly also I'm going to introduce. So that is the end of our first session of the Anglo-Norman literature and the Middle English literature. I hope that you find this video entertaining, and if you want to join for the Telegram channel where you are going to confront mock test Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I am providing you the writers, and after reading those writers, you have to appear for the session and you have to test yourself where you are standing. So if you want to go for the mock test, which I am going to ask you to join, then click the link in the description box and join to the Telegram link and ask yourself where you are standing, what is your status. So that is the end of our lecture. Have a great day ahead, and thank you for listening.